All sentient beings possess the karma of speech, yet few are able to truly guard their words. The ancient masters said, "The mouth is the gate of the heart, and speech is the beginning of intention." How many people suffer lifelong regret from a momentary slip of the tongue? How many families are torn apart by a single reckless word? Those who speak too much are bound to err. Misfortune arises from the mouth. This timeless truth has been repeatedly confirmed throughout history, yet countless people continue to repeat the same mistakes. The Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara, embodying great compassion and mercy, once expounded the Dharma, pointing out that ordinary people often bring about endless calamities due to careless speech. The Bodhisattva expounds on the supreme, skillful means to relieve sentient beings from the suffering caused by harsh speech. For those deeply afflicted by such conditions, how should they practice to transform their situation and attain great freedom and blessing? During the Xiuyuan era of the Tang dynasty, Mount Putuo was shrouded in mist with bustling incense offerings. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva manifested in the purple pearl grove to expound the Dharma, attracting a continuous stream of devotees from all directions. Where the sea meets the sky, golden light pierces through the mist, and a small boat comes against the waves. On the boat stood a middle-aged scholar wearing a jade crown and a purple robe. His face was lean, and a trace of pride was evident between his brows. Xiuyuan arrived, and a monk whispered softly, "This person is naturally exceptionally talented, arrogant, and unruly. It is unclear why he hurriedly came today." The crowd watched curiously and saw Xiuyuan disembark, striding briskly toward the purple bamboo grove. However, when he came within 10 paces of the Bodhisattva's seat, he suddenly knelt down, pressing his forehead heavily against the stone slab. The disciple Xiuyuan respectfully pays homage to Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. His voice is hoarse and trembling with sobs as he beseeches the Bodhisattva to save the lives of his entire family, young and old. This scene astonished all who witnessed it. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's eyes gently lowered, gazing upon this extraordinary visitor, and asked, "What causes such great alarm?" Xiuyuan looked up, his face haggard and his eyes bloodshot. The disciple, formerly served as the crown prince's equerry, is proficient in literary composition and excels in eloquence. In the past, relying on one's talent and boasting arrogantly, speaking fluently like a torrent, one considered oneself unparalleled under heaven. In recent years, I have often been embroiled in verbal disputes despite my reluctance, and now misfortunes come in succession, with my life hanging by a thread. Before his birth, and during his early life, he recounted his own experiences. 3 years ago, in the imperial court, I engaged in a political discourse with Chancellor Yangguang. My words were sharp, publicly exposing the scandals within his household. Yangguang appeared calm and unruffled on the surface, but harbored resentment in his heart in secret. In last year's imperial examination, I was originally among the top candidates, but due to his sabotage, I was disqualified and removed from the list. At the winter literary gathering, I spontaneously composed a poem mocking the petty politics at court. Unexpectedly, one of Yangguang's close confidants presented the poem, and I was arrested and imprisoned for the grave offense of disrespect. Fortunately, I was rescued and narrowly escaped death, but I was forced to become a nun and was never allowed to hold official position for the rest of my life. Xiuyuan continued to pray in agony, as the calamity had not yet ended. Last month, after drinking, I engaged in idle talk with someone and inadvertently uttered a few disrespectful remarks about the royal family. Unbeknownst to me, someone at the gathering secretly reported that the Jinui had already searched my hometown, ransacked the ancestral home, and arrested my elderly parents and my wife and children. Fleeing in panic, I have wandered to this place. I earnestly beseech the Bodhisattva's compassion to guide Amitabha. Among all the spirits, there was a profound silence, and everyone was deeply moved. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's eyes were as gentle as flowing water, and he softly inquired, Do you know why you have encountered this calamity? Xiuyuan was heartbroken and deeply distressed. I had always believed that eloquence was an advantage and that being articulate was a blessing, but I did not expect that this relentless tongue would bring about overwhelming calamities. But every word spoken by the disciple is true, revealing the real truth. Why then does it end up harming himself? When the Bodhisattva mindfully contemplates a lotus flower, observe how this lotus arises from the mud, yet remains unstained by a single speck of dust. When will this flower bloom? When will it wither? The ritual causes and conditions are not understood. Flowers bloom and wither according to their own natural timing. Indeed, Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva's compassionate teachings are like flowers in speech. They bloom when the time is right and wither when the moment has passed. Speaking recklessly without understanding the appropriate time is like forcing a flower to bloom in the dead of winter, only causing harm and damage in vain. An elderly man dressed in a gray robe stepped forward, paid homage to the Bodhisattva, and then said to Xiuyuan, "The old man Xiuyuan once served as a grandmaster Jianya. However, due to his candid speech, he incurred guilt and was exiled to Hainan Island for 15 years. Fortunately, encountering a great master who enlightened me, I left the home life to cultivate the path, and only then did I realize the profound severity of the karma of speech." A flash of pain crossed the old man's eyes. I once witnessed a colleague who, after witnessing the military actions against Tibet, angered the emperor and was executed along with his entire family lineage. A certain minister, after drinking, engaged in idle talk about the emperor's incompetence and was slow-witted. The next day, he was executed by slow slicing. All those teachings are invariably related to words. Xiuyuan's face turned ashen. Could it be that officials are not allowed to speak candidly in their advice, but must only flatter and ingratiate? Would that not go against the teachings of the sages? Xiuyuan shook his head. No, that is not so. A noble person should have things to pursue and things to refrain from. When words can be spoken, silence becomes a fault. When words become inexpressible, opening the mouth is the beginning of calamity. Confucius said, "A noble person delights in speaking, but is swift in action." The wise person has no self, the divine person has no merits, and the sage has no name. This is precisely the principle. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva points toward the distant sea, where the waves surge endlessly, roaring like thunder, yet ultimately return to calm. The human mind is like the ocean, and words are like waves. When a mind is unsettled, the waves become turbulent. When a mind is not calm, words increase. Excessive words inevitably lead to mistakes. Just as ocean waves, the higher they rise, the easier they are to break. Xiuyuan suddenly realized that it was his own inner attachment and strong competitiveness that caused him to speak sharply, leaving no room for others. The Bodhisattva nods, understanding oneself and knowing others, regarded as a wise person. However, the root of excessive speech and avoiding mistakes extends beyond this. Have you ever wondered why some people can awaken those lost in dreams with a single word, revealing profound truths, while others speak countless words that no one fully listens to? Upon deep reflection, it is because the cultivation and wisdom of the speaker differ. No, the Bodhisattva path, even though the Tathagata teaches the Dharma and saves countless beings, does not mean that the words themselves possess great supernatural power. Speech is merely a means of transmission, conveying what is in the heart to others. What matters is the manner in which the speaker ferries the teachings, and whether the listener is able to receive them. The lotus flower in the Bodhisattva's hand emits a wondrous radiance. In the human world, there are 3 realms of speech, all worthy of attentive listening. As soon as these words were spoken, everyone in the spiritual realm held their breath and remained silent, as if even the chirping of birds and insects had ceased. Xiuyuan joined his palms together and prostrated to the Buddha on the ground, sincerely requesting the Bodhisattva to compassionately provide guidance. The Dharma voice of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is resonant and clear. Beginners should first uphold the precept of not lying, refraining from false and untruthful speech. Next, they should observe the precept of not speaking divisively, avoiding stirring up disputes or sowing discord. Furthermore, they should uphold the precept of not using harsh speech, refraining from rude or hurtful language that wounds the mind and spirit. This is fundamental verbal virtue, practicable by everyone, and can prevent great calamities. Xiuyuan listened respectfully, but there was doubt in his heart. All that the disciple said was true and without falsehood. Why then would it bring disaster? At that moment, a commotion arose outside the purple bamboo grove. Everyone turned around to see more than 10 Xiuyuan guards, clad in brocade robes and brandishing swords, charging into the forest with fierce aggression, boldly disrupting the meditation garden. Having committed the grave crime of treason, yet still daring to flee here to hide, the chief commander of the embroidered uniform guards shouted sternly, "We have orders to apprehend you. Surrender immediately." Xiuyuan's face turned ashen, and he collapsed onto the ground. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, however, maintained a calm expression and said to the commander of the embroidered uniform guards, "This is a pure and sacred place. I kindly ask you, benefactor, to withdraw." The commander of the embroidered uniform guards remained unmoved. The Bodhisattva showed compassion, yet the imperial decree was not to be disobeyed. This person's statements are profoundly sacrilegious, disturbing the heavenly realm. If he is not handed over immediately, even your esteemed temple may not escape being implicated. The atmosphere was tense and confrontational. Xiuyuan looked despairingly at the Bodhisattva, feeling that as a disciple burdened with heavy sins, he should not have implicated the venerable monk. "I will follow them immediately, only praying that the Bodhisattva can save the life of my family member." Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva looked at him and asked, "Do you know why you are repeatedly beset by verbal calamities?" Xiuyuan shook his head in bewilderment, saying, "I am but a foolish disciple, only unfortunate in fate." No, Bodhisattva's eye is like lightning, seeing through human hearts. What you call truth is not the true essence of words. You pride yourself on eloquence, yet do not understand the fundamental virtue of speech. If you wish to understand the true reason why excessive speech inevitably leads to error, then listen as I explain. The commander of the embroidered uniform guards impatiently shouted, "If you do not teach soon, do not blame us for offending this sacred place of cultivation." Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva remained unmoved, simply gazing at Xiuyuan, and spoke slowly, seeking to avoid excessive speech that might lead to misfortune. He emphasized that one must cultivate 3 types of superior verbal virtues to transform misfortune into blessings. Within the atmosphere of the purple pearl spirit chamber, tension thickened heavily. The commander of the embroidered uniform guard had drawn his blade 1/3 of its length, the cold gleam flickering. Everyone's hearts were gripped with anxiety, uncertain how this confrontation would ultimately conclude. Xiuyuan knelt on the ground, both fearful and hopeful, wondering what miraculous Dharma doors the Bodhisattva referred to as the 3 superior types of virtuous speech. Is it truly possible to save him from the fires of suffering? The spirit of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva radiated a gentle light, illuminating the entire purple bamboo forest, which rustled night after night, as if whispering some mysterious code. The Bodhisattva's voice is like clear spring water flowing, resonating in the heart of each person. These 3 kinds of verbal virtues are extraordinary. Throughout history, those who have truly penetrated the essence are exceedingly few. Once enlightenment is attained, one can speak appropriately when there is something to say, remain silent when there is nothing worthy of speech, transform symbols as needed, and convert adversaries into friends. The Bodhisattva's words swept across all beings and finally settled upon Xiuyuan. I have witnessed countless beings whose words carried immense weight, immortalizing their names in history. and I have also seen many perish and be utterly destroyed due to calamities arising from careless speech. The great calamity you face today is truly the result of negative karma from speech in your past life, and it is also an opportunity for cultivation in this present life. Upon hearing this, the commander of the embroidered uniform guard slightly hesitated, as if also intimidated by the majesty of the Bodhisattva. If any Bodhisattva possesses profound insight, please swiftly come forth. If one can resolve this matter, it is an immeasurable merit. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara smiled gently, the lotus flower in his hand blossoming with 7-colored radiance, enveloping the entire purple bamboo forest. Once these 3 superior types of virtuous speech are cultivated, they become the supreme skillful means, causing one's words to be highly respected, always appropriate, free from quarrels, and never inviting trouble. Xiuyuan grasped at a life-saving straw and implored, "Your disciple is willing to hear the medicine of the Dharma. I beseech the Bodhisattva to have mercy and enlighten your disciple." Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva, with compassionate eyes like water, whose voice echoes through the purple bamboo forest. The first superior verbal virtue is called knowledge speech. The Bodhisattva pointed to the dimming sunset on the horizon, saying, "The sky has its 4 seasons, and humans have their emotions of joy and anger. Speech is like farming. Sowing must conform to the natural conditions. If seeds are sown forcefully in winter, there will surely be no harvest. Likewise, planting winter vegetables in the height of summer is also in vain. Human speech should also be like this. Observe the time and examine the matter, carefully consider and evaluate the situation. Speak only when it is appropriate to speak. Remain silent when it is not the time. When angry, do not speak. When drunk, remain silent. Be cautious with words upon revisiting matters. In subtle moments, hold your tongue firmly." The Bodhisattva looked at Xiuyuan, who had already exposed people's private matters in the court, long accustomed to mocking the government, and finally bluntly spoke about the imperial family. All were acting without understanding the timing, recklessly speaking, thus bringing disaster upon themselves. Upon hearing these words, the commander of the Jinyui furrowed his brows slightly, as if a sudden understanding had dawned upon him. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara continued, "The second category of superior verbal virtue is called wise and measured speech. Liang has 2 meanings. One refers to quantity, that is, the abundance or scarcity of words. The other refers to measurement, that is, the appropriateness or propriety of speech. Excessive speech is not a blessing. Simplicity in words is the way. Speech itself invites confusion. It is best to speak with restraint. One who speaks eloquently is not necessarily wise. One who is silent and speaks little is not necessarily dull." The Bodhisattva holds a lotus flower in hand. Each flower embodies a world. Each leaf symbolizes enlightenment. A single word surpasses 1,000 words. Silence transcends eloquence. Excessive speech inevitably results in a loss of measure, like a vessel floating on water. If filled too full, it will inevitably overflow. One who understands measure does not engage in excessive speech, does not delight in empty talk. Every word must have proper measure, and one must never lose this sense of proportion. Speak only to the extent of one part, and stop at that one part, never exceeding measure. Xiuyuan suddenly realized that his disciple was usually careless and talkative, speaking incessantly once he began. It was likely that he was unaware of his own limits and spoke excessively. The Bodhisattva smiled and nodded. Recognizing one's mistake and correcting it is the greatest virtue. The third type of superior verbal merit is expressed by a single utterance. Firstly, it is the fundamental meaning of speech. Every word must have meaning and should not be spoken recklessly. Speech must be consistent and should not deviate from the truth. Speech fundamentally serves as a means of communication, with the purpose of benefiting both oneself and others. If unintentional words cause harm, it is better not to speak at all. The Bodhisattva's lotus emits radiant light in all directions. The wisdom of translation has 4 levels. First, cognizant words, which must be based on reason. Second, powerful words, which must be beneficial. Third, harmonious words, which must promote harmony. And fourth, dharma words, which must conform to the path. When the 4 aspects are all cultivated simultaneously, one's speech will surely be accurate and always appropriate. The Bodhisattva looked at the commander of the embroidered uniform guard and said, "Devotee, please observe. Although this person has committed verbal transgressions, it is solely due to ignorance of the precepts of speech. If one can grant him the opportunity to repent, it is also a merit of the benefactor." The commander of the embroidered uniform guard pondered for a moment, then suddenly knelt and said, "Bodhisattva's compassion, your disciple has suddenly attained enlightenment. I was ordered to apprehend Xiuyuan, originally a duty, yet I nearly committed a grievous verbal offense. My earlier words were abrupt and disrespectful, inadvertently offending the sacred reverence, and I sincerely apologize for my lack of respect." After he stood up, he said to Xiuyuan, "Sir Li, the court understands that your words were spoken in the heat of the moment, and that there was no true disrespect intended. The emperor has now decreed to pardon your crimes, but you will be reduced to commoner status and never reinstated. As for your family, they have been safely escorted back to their village." Xiuyuan wept with joy, prostrating and offering thanks. Bodhisattva Avalokiteshvara smiled gently and said, "Both of you have received teachings through your words. Take these as warnings and heed them." The Bodhisattva then instructed the assembly, saying, "In cultivating the virtue of speech, one should guard the mouth as if it were a sealed vessel. Before speaking, the mind must reflect thrice. Is what I am about to say appropriate? Is it true and proper? Is it beneficial? Only when all 3 conditions are met should one speak. If any of these conditions fail, it is better to remain steadfastly silent. Moreover, one must remain humble and open-minded. The proud speak excessively, while the humble speak sparingly. Only by maintaining a humble heart can one fully listen to others and discern right from wrong, truth from falsehood." The Bodhisattva pointed to the tall bamboo in the purple bamboo grove. The nature of bamboo is humble, outwardly firm, yet inwardly gentle, hollow inside, yet straight outside. It does not break when swayed by wind and rain precisely because of its humility. Finally, one must cultivate a loving kindness that is directed towards others. Before speaking, reflect on the benefit this speech may bring to others. If it brings no benefit but harm, it is better not to speak. Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva summarized, "Wise speech means knowing when to speak and when to remain silent." Pramavakya, the appropriate measure of clarity and brevity in speech. Understanding meaningful words involves grasping the fundamental significance and value of speech. Cultivating the 3 simultaneously, body, speech, and mind, ensures that one's words come naturally and appropriately, thereby avoiding calamities. Xiuyuan respectfully prostrated and said, "The disciple has received the teaching. In the past, relying on one's talent and pride, speaking sharply, often hurt others without awareness. From this moment onward, I shall diligently remember the teachings of the Bodhisattva, practice the 3 virtues of speech, and no longer speak excessively, for it surely leads to loss." The Bodhisattva is compassionate and gentle in minor matters. Since humans are not saints or sages, who can be without faults, to recognize one's mistakes and correct them is the greatest virtue. It is rare to have such realization today. The commander of the Xiuyuan also sighed with feeling, saying, "The teachings of the Bodhisattva are truly enlightening, like a refreshing shower of wisdom. We who enforce the law often think we are bound by official duties and speak without restraint, not realizing there are so many subtleties involved. The 3 virtues of wisdom, empathy, and knowing when to stop are indeed the indispensable principles for those who hold office and conduct affairs." The Bodhisattva nodded and said, "Many people are harmed by their own tongues. Momentary pleasure leads to lifelong regret. The mouth is the gateway of calamity and blessing, and speech is the messenger of the heart. When the mind does not engage in wrongful thoughts, and the speech does not utter falsehoods, calamities naturally are kept at bay. A disciple who did not understand asked, Bhagwan, sometimes one clearly knows that something cannot be spoken, yet feels an urgent need to express it. How should one conduct oneself in such a situation? The great path of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva is caused by attachment. Sentient beings possess 7 emotions and 6 desires, making attachment inevitable. If one can cultivate the 4 immeasurables, loving kindness, compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity, these attachments can be alleviated. When the mind is free from attachments, it naturally will not be swayed by momentary emotions. Xiuyuan pondered deeply, and the disciple understood that excessive speech inevitably leads to mistakes. The root cause lies in the attachment and restlessness of the mind. If one's mind is like still water, naturally it will not be harmed by words. The Bodhisattva nodded with satisfaction, acknowledging that you have obtained the correct medicine. The path of speech ultimately leads back to a new practice. When the mind is pure, the speech is pure. When the mind is corrupt, the speech is corrupt. As the sun sets in the west, the Bodhisattva assembly in the purple bamboo forest gradually disperses. Xiuyuan departed together with several commanders, both of them bearing the serenity of enlightenment on their faces. Xiuyuan diligently remembered the Bodhisattva's teachings, speaking and acting with prudence and mindfulness. He resigned from official duties and established an academy in Jiangnan, where he taught students poetry, literature, rites, and music, while also imparting the 3 types of verbal virtues bestowed by the Bodhisattva. He no longer behaved recklessly and frivolously. Instead, he learned the way of speech characterized by wisdom, understanding, and righteousness. With diligent practice throughout his life, he nurtured countless disciples across the world. The commander of the embroidered uniform guard later renounced his official position and embraced the way, becoming a Dharma protector Vajra in the purple bamboo forest, guarding a pure land in that region. Several years later, a coup occurred in the court. Yang Wang, who was once an enemy of Xiuyuan, was demoted for offending the authorities, and his family was annihilated. An old friend came to visit, inviting Xiuyuan to return to the court. He politely declined, saying, "There is no need to use material possessions, virtues, words, or ultimate truths to compel one who has fallen away. When the world hears these words, I do not lament." The deeds of Xiuyuan and the teachings of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva were recorded and included in the Universal Gate chapter, Pumenpin, along with commentaries, and widely disseminated. For thousands of years, countless practitioners have cultivated verbal virtue based on this, reaping immense benefits. Reflecting on the story of Xiuyuan, let us contemplate our own words and actions. Every day, we utter countless words. How many of them are thoughtfully considered, and how many truly embody wisdom, discernment, and understanding of meaning? In modern society, the explosion of information means that a single slip of the tongue on social media can instantly spread worldwide, triggering unpredictable consequences. The principle that speaking too much inevitably leads to mistakes is especially important in today's world. The teachings of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva transcend time and space, still shining brightly with the light of wisdom. Speech is not only a tool for communication, but also a means for cultivating the mind. Every moment of thoughtful consideration before speaking, every restraint exercised in moderation, and every kind word that benefits both others and oneself constitute a practice of self-cultivation within one's own heart. When we master the art of speech, we can utter the right words at the right time, neither harming others nor ourselves. This is not only a way of dealing with the world, but also a state of cultivating the mind. 1,000 words are not as valuable as a timely, virtuous, and beneficial good word. 10,000 volumes of books are not as precious as a humble, compassionate, and altruistic heart. Let us always remember the teachings of Avalokiteshvara Bodhisattva. The mouth is the gateway of the heart, and speech is the knowledge of the mind. Guard one's speech as if sealing a bottle. Maintain humility like an open valley, and cultivate a compassionate heart that benefits others. The highest realm of speech lies not in eloquence or persuasive ability, but in wisdom and virtue. Understanding the cultivation of the threefold virtues, one's words must be beneficial to many and always appropriate. To speak much without error and to act with minimal contrivance is truly the perfect realization of speech.